Hey everyone, welcome to the Cloud UC podcast by NUWAVE. Today we are continuing a conversation on the reality of UC in 2026. I kicked this conversation off with Rob Scott of UC Today, who holds this kind of bird's eye view on what we can expect this year. But today, I want to dig deeper with a new guest exploring the exact same concepts we're all curious about this year, especially as we step into some of our New Year's resolutions. I'm Sara. I am the Director of Learning and Development at NUWAVE, and I am joined by someone who has lived every phase of the UC space, from Lync and Skype for Business to the Teams era, and now, of course, AI, which is everywhere. Tom Arbuthnot. Tom, welcome and thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on the show. I haven't listened back to the Rob show yet, so let's see if me and Rob agree or disagree. That'll be fun.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, we can kind of have you guys duke it out, and if anything doesn't quite correlate, then I'll have you guys come in together, and then we can have an even bigger
battle
conversation.
out live. I think that's the best one.
Well, Tom, what I'd like to do is just start out by getting the background foundational information. So can you just start, for someone who is not a part of the UC space, tell us what it is that you're currently doing now?
So my history is mostly working with large global enterprises, historically mainly deploying initially, and then kind of architecture and strategic guidance. That goes way back to, as you said, the OCS, Lync, Skype for Business. More recently, the last few years, I've been running my own organization, Empowering Cloud, and we're focused on community research and enablement all around Microsoft 365, Microsoft Teams. So lots of community events, podcasts, newsletter, just bringing people together. And we bring lots of kind of customers and experts together to help share information. As you know, this space moves really, really fast. So I think it's really important to bring people together to make sure we all understand what's going on, even more so in this AI era.
Yeah, I could agree more. And I think that in these various fields, it's hard to really know who the experts are. And I think that that's one of the things that you do so well, is you help us understand who we can seek within this huge community of extremely intelligent developers, architects, everyone. And some of the videos that I've watched that you've put out are truly individuals who I'm like, oh my gosh, this is how I can focus on adoption with our group. And so thank you for bringing that to the community. What gaps were you trying to fill, and do you think we're really missing in the UC space when you began to endeavor to create Empower Cloud?
The thing about UC in particular is it has hard dependencies on various different bits of ecosystem. So things like SharePoint, for example, you can just deploy SharePoint natively, and by and large, you use what's in the box. But with Teams, you've got compliance recording, you've obviously got PSTN, which you guys know well. You've got contact center, you've got devices ecosystem, and then you've got often complex integrated deployments as well. It's got simpler as we go to Teams. It's got more cloudy and more SaaSy, but there's still lots of options and lots of dependencies. So helping organizations understand how they pick partners, how they pick a path, how they manage it, how they operate it, that's where we spend a lot of our time.
Well, I definitely want to talk about a couple of those points that you made, and those, topics or things that you're really trying to discuss and help people work through. Let's talk about some of the problems that these individuals that you're engaging with are coming to you about in 2026 and right now. What are they worried about? What are people scrambling over? What are you hearing and seeing?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that come to mind. So Microsoft, tends to sell things as a suite. So making the most out of what they've already invested in as an organization is a common theme. Microsoft had so much, they changed so much. Copilot chat, for example, I know we're going to talk AI today. That's free in the suite, but how do you adopt it? How do you make the most of it? Is it right for all users? That's a common thread at the moment. Microsoft have just announced 26 million Teams phone users, but there's way more than that with Microsoft E5 license, which includes phone. So again, you've got organizations that have already invested in the suite, but are still on the Teams phone journey, as an example. But I guess the common thread between all of it is keeping on top of kind of the tidal wave of change and updates and value, and making sure the organization make the most of it, and making sure that IT and operations understand it.
I mean, I hear two primary themes that I think actually should be underlying themes for this conversation for our partners as we give them takeaways. And it's the consistency, right? You've had this newsletter, you've been consistent, and that's what's going to garner trust and that expectation that gets met, and dependability. huge, obviously most important, but then also just the aspect of getting yourself out there, going and meeting and working with people and talking to people about their problems. I mean, it's just so important. We can't sit, at the computer the entire time, even though we are virtual communication focused folks. We've got to be stepping out of our territory of comfort, having conversations and learning from others.
Definitely. The other thing that I think is important when you're kind of as a partner reaching out to people is the cloud is moving so fast now. Nobody is like an expert on anything or everything. So actually you can just talk about the journey you're on, the journey you're taking your customers on, what you're learning, what they're learning. Like, you don't have to portray yourself as the expert in X. You can just say, look, this is interesting, this is new, this is what I'm hearing, this is what my customers are saying. Is this your challenge? So I think it's much easier when you're talking about kind of the journey as opposed to portraying yourself as, expert in X or expert in Y.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that level of being humble and just being curious and staying curious. I really appreciate that advice. I mean, I think we can all take that in lots of different applications. So what has changed the most in how you see people buying and using UC today? And I know that's a loaded question and you can't just choose one, especially being here 15 years, but let's talk about at least the current paradigm of where we're at. What has changed most recently?
The most recently is AI. I guess taking it back a little bit, we've definitely, COVID is the cliche now, but that definitely accelerated that everybody understands what it is. Back in the OCS and Lync days, you had to explain what it is. Skype, it got a little bit more clearer because you would always say like Skype consumer, but for business. But going back to those days, people were amazed you could do a video call. They were amazed you could work from home and connect to your employees and your peers. Everybody gets that now. Everybody has multiple ways to do video calls, so that's a given now. And it's more like, which platform have you already chosen as an organization, and then how do you make the most of it? And then, as you said, AI definitely is starting to come in, but it's more how do I actually get value out of it? Things like meeting recaps and insights into meetings are the onboard for most people in AI, because it's such a common problem to have too many meetings and to need the insights from them. And it's very easy to adopt. Like, most of the UC tools will automatically generate you meeting summaries now. So for many people, that's their easy on ramp to, oh, there's some AI value I can have here just by having an automatic summary of my meetings.
Yeah, thank you. And I kind of jumped the gun on the AI conversation, but because you bring this up with the recaps, what are some of the pivotal practices that you think folks, users, owners are missing and not utilizing enough in terms of what's already available with AI for Teams, Copilot, and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a big divide at the moment. So Copilot, Microsoft are, incredibly confusing with their terminology and their naming, their features constantly changing, right? So that's just a challenge in itself, but that's always been a challenge. But Copilot, there is a free in the box version, and then there's M365 Copilot, the paid version. And actually there's a ton of value in the free version across Microsoft 365. So that's just your basic, you can talk to the chat, it can answer questions, it can review documents. For Teams, you do need that M365 Copilot license to start getting the meeting recap, the insights over your chats and channels and things like that. For lots of users, actually, you might want to start with just free Copilot chats and getting a feel for how that works. Maybe Teams Premium, which includes the intelligent meeting recap. What's just got announced as of late last year, we're recording at the start of 26 now, is a more cost-effective Copilot license for up to 300 seats for SMB mid-market business SKUs. So they can get the full Copilot for just $21 a user now. But the main thing I would say theme-wise is buying the license is one thing, but then taking time with users to make sure they understand how to do things, how to drive value out of it. That's a big deal. And some users will be naturally forward-leaning, they will try. That's not most people. Most people are just trying to get their job done. So don't underestimate the amount of adoption and change and habit change you need to really drive the value out of AI.
Like, it's a fun, kind of feels intimidating task, but it's actually really important that we go to AI to see what it's producing, to see what it's suggesting as users, kind of, prompt building and that type of thing, a whole nother discussion, but really just spending time with AI to understand, okay, here's where it's benefiting me now, and here's how it's helping me get my job done today. And I think that leap for users is moving into the next, like, let's actually plan and innovate and improve what the future looks like. And I think we're, definitely seeing that shift where folks are moving from the, okay, just day-to-day work support AI experience. And that's why Copilot and what Teams is providing with all of these additional tools is going to be so critical, because it'll help us stop thinking about that day-to-day and kind of move to the beyond territory. So it'll be fun to see even what I'm doing in the next couple of years.
Everything is changing all the time, and that's not new. Like, it's accelerated with AI, but that's always been the case. And I think that's part of the adoption kind of challenge, is getting people to use it and experiment. And that's a really good pitch you kind of said there, where actually, like, we'd like to use AI because we think it'll make you more productive, but you should be learning AI for yourself, because who knows what role or job or where you're working in the future. But regardless, AI is going to have some kind of impact. So it's best to educate yourself. And we'll see, I think, more and more of that messaging throughout this year, where people who weren't the natural early adopters start to get on the bandwagon.
It is true. And I think just kind of, I tend to be an optimist, and I have people in my life who are pessimists around AI. And so it's great having the conversations with them and just kind of taking our stances and approaches to feel comfortable. And I think at the end of the day, we're all ending up in the same place, which is using it more and more. So it's great to hear that there is kind of a shift in usage for licenses and the ways that this can be deployed. Because I know that there are some smaller local organizations that will be able to take advantage of some of these tools that they haven't been. So that should be really exciting to see.
And actually, smaller organizations are poised to take more advantage faster in a lot of cases, because big orgs move slow. So they understand it, they might have the money, but getting a big org to actually change is quite an intensive task. Whereas, say you've got a 30, 50, 100 person company, you can pivot people faster. And also, you might not have, say you've only got 5 people on support, whereas a big company's got hundreds. The value you can drive out of AI as a small organization, if you take those 5 people and really train them and get value out of them, you can see that quicker in a small org. So small organizations on these kind of technology curves, often if they're willing to do it, can move faster and drive value faster.
Oh, such a great point. I really love that. You're absolutely right. I mean, previous company, tens of thousands of employees, and now we're in the hundreds range. And so, just kind of seeing what that migration experience is like and how it's shifted, and how much shorter it can be. That's kind of really a valuable point. So I love that these smaller groups and teams have the ability to actually really position, poise, and influence some of these larger orgs and get ahead, take advantage of the, okay, cool, let's get ahead while we can before,
this is your chance to compete against the big boys and actually take an advantage potentially.
Some good thoughts and advice and things for folks to think about as they're thinking about what their organization is going to look like in 2026, how they want to shape it. So this is a bit of an abstract question. I want to help conceptualize more for folks and be a catalyst to understand what all Teams and just the hybrid workplace means, because you're right. You mentioned COVID. That was just the big leap into everyone now gets what it means to work from home. I'm thinking about what are these kind of abstract things that actually define the term collaboration. So it takes us out of just meetings and, IMs and move us into this kind of critical infrastructure that we know it is, but we're experiencing on a day-to-day and maybe not really tuning into.
Yeah, you hit the key word there, which is collaboration. Teams can make phone calls, can make VoIP calls, can do meetings. And like, that's the same as all other UC. Where Teams really excels is the chat and channels and files and kind of integration to your line of business. Like, if you can get people using the Teams feature of Teams, again, terrible naming, bless Microsoft, like Teams being individual groups with channels that are related to a topic. So say this show, for example, you might have a team and you can have a channel about what guests we're going to have next, and a channel about production, and a channel about how we're doing things behind the scenes, and all that knowledge is being kept in one place. And you bring someone new into the project, they have all the context. You can now have AI reason over all the context. You can have all the files live in those channels as well, which lives on SharePoint. So all the data you need is in there. And a lot of the value of the collaboration element of Teams is about working together in a very kind of agile, productive way, but in a way that all the information is centralized. So it's not someone new comes into the team and there's a bunch of email history, but they can't get access to that. There's some chat history, but they weren't in the chats, and there were meetings, but who knows where the recordings or the transcripts are. All of that can be centralized in Teams. So that's Teams at its best. And it's easy to say and hard to do, because that again requires a change in behavior and a change in how we work. But I think interestingly, AI is accelerating the value people see from that, because suddenly they're like, oh, if I do have the diligence to keep all the data and all the information in one place, I can have AI query it all and it's all there. So for things like creating training content or finding out why a decision was made, previously I might have had all the chat history, but I couldn't reasonably search through it to find out why we decided to use ABC product or XYZ. But now AI can reason over all of that. Actually, I can ask the AI to say, hey, look at the NUWAVE podcast. Why did we go down this road? Who have we had on recently? Who can we have on next? And it can reason over all of that. So that's where Teams really excels beyond just meeting and calls into kind of bringing workflows together.
There's so many points and little examples that you touched on there, but even if, aside from the searchability that AI provides, just that little ability to provide chat history, I mean, it's such a simple button, but boom, it opens up so much possibility and so much less work for me to have to do to get some moment. It's that simple. And then I just crack up. I'm thinking about my very first experience when I really went to Copilot and I asked a bit more pointed, really kind of digging, testing kind of question. And it gave me this beautiful summary, but I didn't realize it was pulling from my emails. It was pulling from all the chat history. I'm like, of course this answer is so informed, but you need all of me. And I'm like, how do I feel? You kind of go through this experience where you come to trust and you're like, okay, I don't even care. You should go through it all because I needed this answer and information. And so again, I think there's that user experience that is a part of this journey, but also then just the handiness that's frank. And it's like, great, this is it. The data is there. Use it, make use of it.
That history, Microsoft call that work IQ, which is the culmination of your Copilot having access to all the information you're allowed to access to. So your email, your files, your chat history, your meeting recordings, all that stuff. And we've just recently had that into phone as well. So your phone calls could all be transcribed and become assets as well. And that's where Copilot is different to other AIs, because it has access to all that. As you say, you ask a question and it's reasoning over all your work data, your work knowledge to help answer that the best it can.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to know. And I think if we just use it right and we work in ways that feel very comfortable and confident, then yeah, it's going to be a really exciting year. I think 2026, I mean, obviously AI hit the ground, and then there was this little bit of a phase of, okay, how do we do this? But now I think we're really going to see some things this year. So it's going to be exciting for us all to be a part of it. I think the AI conversation, we will kind of touch on a little bit more. I've got some other shifted questions around that. With your knowledge and exposure, where do you think Teams is heading in terms of whether it's with the AI or not, but where do you think it's heading in terms of developing and offering new ways to collaborate? What are some of the things that we're not really aware of that are coming on board that you might know about?
It's a fairly mature platform now, and a lot of the UC platforms, you can take Zoom, you can take Webex, you can take Teams. The base functionality is pretty similar. Like we've all got video calling, we've all got these kind of collaborative spaces. Teams in the kind of room space is developing quite fast. So things like multi-camera is really interesting, whereby we can have different views of the room, so we can get better engaging conversations. Certainly in the US and to a lesser extent, but still in most European countries, there's been a bit of a back to the office, back to work, like let's get people back together. So suddenly having Teams work well in the meeting room as well as remote has become top of mind for a lot of people. And then, it's kind of broken record, but like the AI really is where the innovation is. So Microsoft have things like Interpreter Agent, which does real-time live translation of languages. So the receiver can choose what language they're hearing in. That's really exciting. There's a lot of work going into webinars and events. And Microsoft have a thing called a facilitator agent. We think of it like a kind of PM agent that lives in the meeting, that's taking notes for you, that's assigning tasks. We're still really early days in this stuff. Like the models are getting better, but I think this year is going to be a year of seeing where AI actually adds real value and experimentation. Like some things will work, some things won't work. If you can imagine a point where we just constantly have providing we approve it, this ambient AI around us that's grabbing out key points, that's taking minutes for us, that's remembering stuff, that's putting it in our planner, reminding us. I'm really excited about that. And I don't have the best memory. So for me, I would love to have someone kind of on my shoulder being like, yeah, you said you do this, you said you do that, you said you'd be there.
I love that term, ambient AI. I think that is the key term for me. What are some ways that you think folks are using AI wrong, or they're focusing on it wrong, or and it might not even be AI, but just some of the latest things, it's kind of pushing people in a wrong direction?
I think one of the challenges with the AI stuff is it's not always right, and that can turn certain people off.
Yeah.
So you think about, there are certain obviously business scenarios where you can't possibly be wrong, but like for things like research or things like coming up with in IT lots of scripting, like AI could get you some of the way there and you might still need to tweak it, and some people will take that as, well, it didn't get it right so it's a waste of time, and other people think, well, it got me 80% of the way there, that's a time saving, and I have 20%. And I think if you're going to get value out of AI, you have to kind of separate yourself from it's going to be perfect every time into how can it help me get there. And maybe you subscribe to the idea that it's going to get better and better, and therefore it's worth the investment. But even if you don't, if you say it's not going to get any better than this, I think it's hard to argue there isn't some value to unlock. And I believe it is going to get incrementally better. I'm not sure what the pace is, but it will get better. But already, even if it didn't, I think there's just tons of value to be had in terms of meeting recaps, summary. Certainly I use it a lot for scripts and data research. And in the time we've been playing with it, the last few years, it has got things like the reasoning models have got exponentially better than where they were. So I think, one of the adoption challenges is saying that, like, it's not going to be right every time. You have to be kind of critical about the output, but that kind of classic framing of thinking of it as a super smart but not very practical intern, like, it's very, very clever, but if you haven't articulated well what you want and you haven't checked the work, you wouldn't take the intern's work and send it straight to the P1 client. You'd send it through somebody to kind of tune it up. Same principle with AI.
Oh, so great. I like this. We've got ambient AI. We've got an incredibly intelligent intern. These are just really great ways to think about it. And I had a conversation with an expert in the medical field recently, but what he had said to me was, I've tried AI and it gets most of the things wrong that I'm asking it. And it was interesting. It made me realize that he has just started using AI. Now, I started using it right when it came out and it was made available to me. And that was initially through ChatGPT. And so now I've had this journey with it, and I've seen exactly what you pointed out, which is this, intelligence that has developed and the reasoning getting better. And so I have this understanding of how it is improving. But for him, he's just started with it. It's very kind of matter of fact, like, it's not really giving me the right answers. And the other thing is he was asking it medical questions. And I just, my only answer to him was, but you are the expert. You're the expert on this. And so what we need is, if you go to a medical specifically developed AI, then you're going to have a much better experience because you're the experts that are actually shaping this knowledge and this AI's information. So, I didn't have a lot to give him, but it was kind of fascinating to think about what people are going to run into who are just starting out with AI, who kind of have these expectations.
Yeah, and a lot of people start off with it just like, I'll ask it a very ill-defined question, and it will give an answer, the best answer it can give. But like for a medical example, might be actually what you need to be doing is getting the 3 or 4 or 5 papers on that topic, putting them in, having it ground over only that information. So that would be, kind of the ChatGPT projects, or Microsoft have that in OneDrive, or Claude have it as, I think Claude is project as well, Notebook LM, doesn't matter what it is really, but you can bring a subset of information together as resources and reason over that. So very often there's a conversation to be had about what are you trying to achieve, and actually is there a better way to achieve a better answer. But again, journey story. And as you said, it might be, if it's a life and death medical situation, it might not be the best option. The other thing that is really interesting about medical is plenty of people don't have access to doctors and medical care. And actually, is it better than not having access? So like actually, or things like there's been lots of work done on looking at things like x-rays. The AI is getting very, very good at that kind of stuff. So whereas there's a human failure rate to that stuff, there's an AI failure rate for sure. But actually, if it makes it cheaper to have everything reviewed more often, then maybe you're getting an imperfect response, but you're getting more people access to more information. So net you're winning. There's kind of framing like that to think about.
Oh, you are just singing my song. I have talked about this a lot within the education realm. We could go off on all of the examples, but I think you're right. I think the access and the availability is critical. And now we're just in a space of let's start the journey and see how we can use it in a way that makes sense to us. So
Yeah, education's really exciting. So
I
I've got
know.
two daughters, and it's like this, personal tutor that's infinitely patient, that can shape things to how you learn. Everybody learns slightly differently. Like, again, like if you've got the money and you could have a one-to-one tutor, that's great, but that's
Yes.
not most people. But actually, we can kind of have a close representation of a personal tutor now. Some of the voice models are amazing. Like I have
Yes.
my girls, with Copilot voice, just asking questions, getting answers, and it's a way they're willing to engage. And the other thing that's really interesting is, like some of the math stuff that my older girl does. I'm like, I can't remember. I can remember how we learned that, but like if I'm honest, I'm like, I'm not sure how we would best explain it. Quick photo, like how would you explain this to an 11-year-old? Like that. Oh, it's perfect. Like so, yeah.
So good.
I'm fully excited about the, again, democratization of
Yes.
education. It's a really big value there.
Yeah, you're exciting me. And I want to tangent on all of these cool ideas and fun things I want to do around AI. The one thing I am curious about, if you have advice for partners who are starting to bring in, AI or use Copilot, they're, getting ready to kind of sign over some agency in terms of data. What are some of the questions and the things that they need to be aware of and asking in terms of making healthy decisions for AI support in their tools this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's something that everybody should look at. And I guess it depends on what platform you're choosing. Obviously, I spend a lot of my time in the Microsoft ecosystem. So if it's a Microsoft Teams customer, they've probably already kind of blessed Microsoft in some sense for, we trust you with our data, our files, our email. Like they've already got most of that information. Microsoft have really good documentation on how they're running AI, what they're doing with it. As you get into bigger organizations, there's definitely questions about where data is being processed and data sovereignty. But most of the big platforms, all when you're in an enterprise plan, won't train on your data, use your data, learn from your data. That's pretty common across the enterprise plans. Where you have to be careful is like lots of tools that have kind of SMB or pro options, they still have options to
Mm,
train on your data. So there's a big difference between kind of proper business plans and kind of pro plans. That's not anybody, that's kind of everybody.
yeah.
So look carefully at what those tools are doing with your data. But from a customer point of view, they should be led by what they're deciding is right, and which platforms and organizations they trust. Again, could be Cisco WebEx, could be Zoom, could be Microsoft. They're all similar in this respect. They kind of have enterprise protections with your data,
Hmm.
where you see, things like there's tons of third-party meeting minutes tools, and they have very different policies about what they do with your data and where and why.
Yeah.
So yeah, one of the values you as a partner can bring to your customer is actually understanding some of that landscape and helping them navigate through it.
Yeah, well, thank you. You touched on the ones that, I think we're all fairly aware of and in agreement, but data ownership, admin control, outcomes versus kind of what's just actual marketing and their slide deck. But you actually made me think about something that I experienced, and that was had downloaded a tool for just what we were talking about, keeping my brain together, but it was essentially an agenda task-based tool. And it was my own private tool on my computer. And it immediately started popping up in my work meetings and saying, hey, do you want me to record this so that I can get your meetings for you? I was like, oh, how quickly, I work closely with security. And so I'm like, oh no, get out of here. But how quickly an individual user can just kind of make their organization susceptible. And I think it's something that even users have to start to be aware of, is like there are protocols and yes and no things, but it can be really easy to just kind of grab and be like, oh yes, let me use this tool. And, it supports your work maybe a ton, but can be a little
Yeah, and
tricky.
that's the same with the chat models that are like kind of, outside. If you don't give your users a sanction tool,
Yes.
they're not trying to maliciously share data. They're just like, how do I do this efficiently? Oh, I've seen like ChatGPT consumer, it's really cool, I'll do it in that, not realizing that because they're using it at a consumer level, it's not as secure with the data. So yeah, very important for organizations at all sizes, because everybody has the same data requirements, to try and offer your users a corporately sanctioned version so that they're going down the right road as far as data security and best practices as well.
Yeah, great point. Make sure that you make it accessible to them so that they're not off doing whatever they want.
Some of your best people will want to, because they're just trying to do the tools to get the things done. They know there's efficiency gains. So yeah, if you don't give them a valid road, either they go somewhere else that is more, progressive, and they can learn the tools and they can stay high value, or they potentially bend the rules, which can get you into all sorts of trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Thank you for that advice. I will remember that. Okay, so I want to talk about last kind of subject here, really what's helpful for the partners, but just a little bit more about you. So you've got a ton of great videos, and I wanted to take some of the topics that you touched on in your videos and kind of condense them here so that we can give them a little taste and get folks back to your YouTube. But with these experts that you met, or these experiences that you've had, the conferences, are there any that stand out for you as just kind of most exciting, most empowering, that really had an impact on you and the knowledge that you've gained as of late?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate to get to talk to a lot of the leadership people at Microsoft, and that's always really interesting, because the further up the chain you get, the more vision you get. Obviously, there's big organization, lots of people working on lots of features, and some of our podcasts we get literally the feature owner for the recaps, or the feature owner for CarPlay, and that's super interesting in a way because they're solving a very specific problem. But then when we get to kind of the CVP level of the different people in the organization, it's much more their challenge is like, how do I bring value to hundreds of millions of users in this new way, and now a lot of with AI. So yeah, I think I'm just very fortunate to get to have those conversations. But equally, like the enterprise I talk to, that's what keeps the whole community grounded, because it's all well and good talking to Microsoft who create the product, but actually it's the people using the product that's really interesting, and seeing what the use cases are. And we get to talk to people that are not just classic knowledge worker enterprises, but all different verticals, retail, manufacturing, comms, obviously a lot of, and seeing how people actually adopt this stuff and use it globally is really, really interesting.
Yeah, that's so fun. And I'm glad that you share that, with the community, and you meet those experts and then you bring it back to the table. I have this quote or motto that I kind of live by within my work, and that's that knowledge is power, but knowledge share is power unleashed. And I think that that's what, you're doing. So I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, that would perfectly apply to what we're doing. And it's really interesting. Like, even when we used to do a lot more deployment stuff hands-on, my blog, I would always share pretty much every detail of what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it. And people would come to me and say, well, why would you blog all that for free? Because then people can just copy what you're doing. I'm like, yeah, but the people who want to do it themselves anyway, and it's adding value to them. And the people that want to pay someone to do it will come to the person who has helped them understand it. So my whole career has been kind of proven that model, that actually sharing is ultimately brings value back to everybody.
Oh, again, music to my ears. I love it. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that insight. To wrap up the conversation, I've got a couple of quick fire questions specifically aimed at partners. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Go for it.
Okay. What are the sharpest partners doing differently than anyone else today?
Not having a features conversation, but having a business conversation, particularly around UC, which we're focused on, is getting into the productivity conversation, salespeople, support, CX. Like it's no good going in and saying channels, trunks, rooms. It should be, what's your organizational structure like? How are people working? How are you making them productive? And we're super fortunate that AI is coming, into our space in terms of CX and UC pretty heavily. So you've got a really valid conversation to have there that isn't just features and feeds and licenses and channels.
Yeah, absolutely. Great answer. Thank you. What impact are partners leaving on the table when it comes to Teams and voice? What are they not utilizing enough?
I think that's interesting. Teams is a whole platform play. So you have these spot partners who only do rooms or only do phone or only do collab. And I get to talk to the partners quite a lot. And the ones that are, helping customers more and taking more of the deal off the table either do multiple things or they have strong partnerships. So they're not leaving the door open for like, well, we just do phone, but somebody else does rooms. Because guess what? That rooms person with things like Operator Connect can very easily get into the phone space now. So if you've got tight partnerships, you're helping that customer because you're bringing the whole conversation to the table. And this expands now into the AI conversation, is like, actually, even if you're not going to sell Copilot, quote unquote, you need to help your organizations, your customers make the most of it because it's part of the Teams conversation.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. The suite conversation is so important because I can even kind of get myself pigeonholed as a user into certain areas. So it's important for me to kind of go to the experts, be making sure that I'm taking adoption and catalyst, conversations and applying them to my everyday work as well. And it's at the partner and the admin level as well. So, all right, if you were advising a new partner entering the space today, what's one mistake that they should avoid?
Again, to not, I think, not think about it as phone. Like
Yeah.
that's the old paradigm. Like you're business enablement, you're saving costs, you're rationalizing, you're making the business more flexible, you're adding value. If you're coming in new, one of your benefits is you don't have a legacy to disrupt. So coming in and saying, we can save you cost, we can rip all this stuff out, we can make you more agile, we can move fast, it can all be cloud first. You're very unlocked to have a really good conversation about changing things without having kind of a business to disrupt, where you're like, actually, we want to talk about having as many channels as possible and moving as slowly as possible because we're making money out of that. So I think if you're coming in new, being more disruptive and driving on cost and value is a really good thing to do.
Ah, so succinct. Thank you. I love how you eloquently put your solutions and your answers together. It just really helps me understand and kind of, surmise the way everything should be looking. So I think we've got some good info for all sorts of different audiences in 2026. So I appreciate that. Any final points of advice that you want to offer anyone take advantage of? Any questions that we've missed or things that you want to share at this point?
No, I think I really enjoyed the conversation. I was going to say thanks to you and the NUWAVE team. You guys have been big supporters of everything we've done with Empowering Cloud, and even beyond that, back in my kind of deployment days. Great organization, and yeah, if people are interested, empowering.cloud is the place to start for the podcast and the newsletter and the briefings, and all of that stuff is free to access thanks to people like NUWAVE and others who support the community. So hopefully, if you're interested in this conversation, there'll be some value for you there. But no, thanks, Sarah. Thanks for having me on the show. It was really fun.
Yeah, thank you for the conversation. We'll keep driving folks over to Empower Cloud. I hope you have a lovely day, and we'll bug you for the next round of advice mid-year, we'll say.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Thanks, Tom.